started with a whisper. Just a faint, almost imperceptible sound in the dead of night. I thought I was imagining it at first, but then it came again, louder this time, and I knew I wasn't alone.
Did you hear that?
I turned to my roommate, his face pale in the dim light of the hospital room. We were both patients here, stuck in this sterile, lifeless place. The kind of place where time doesn't move, and the air feels heavy with something you can't quite name.
Yeah, I heard it.
The whisper came again, this time from the corner of the room. It wasn't a word, not exactly. More like a hiss, a sound that didn't belong to anything human. My skin prickled, and I pulled the thin hospital blanket tighter around me.
What the hell is that?
Before he could answer, the lights flickered. Just once, but it was enough to make my heart race. The hospital was old, and the wiring was probably just as ancient, but something about it felt wrong. Like the building itself was alive, watching us.
Maybe it's just the wind.
He didn't sound convinced, and neither was I. The windows were closed, and the air was still. There was no wind. The whisper came again, louder now, and this time it was followed by a soft tapping. Like fingernails on glass?
That's not the wind.
I sat up, my eyes fixed on the corner of the room. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, and then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was the kind of silence that presses down on you, heavy and suffocating.
Maybe we should call the nurse.
I nodded, but before I could reach for the call button, the door creaked open. Not all the way, just enough to let a sliver of light spill in from the hallway. I held my breath, waiting for someone to step inside, but no one did.
Hello?
No answer. Just the sound of the door slowly swinging open wider. I could see the hallway now, empty and dimly lit. The whisper came again, this time from the doorway, and I felt a chill run down my spine.
This isn't right.
He was right. None of this was right. Hospitals were supposed to be safe, places where you went to get better. But this place felt wrong, like it was hiding something dark and ancient.
Let's just stay here, maybe it'll go away.
I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't. The whisper was closer now, almost in the room with us. I could feel it, like a cold breath on the back of my neck. And then, I saw it.
What the hell is that?
It was a shadow, but not like any shadow I'd ever seen. It moved on its own, slithering across the floor like liquid. It didn't belong to anything. Didn't come from any light source. It was just there. And it was coming toward us.
Go back.
We both scrambled to the far side of the room, pressing ourselves against the wall. The shadow stopped at the foot of my bed, and for a moment it just sat there, pulsing like a living thing. And then it started to rise.
Oh, God.
It took shape, forming into something vaguely humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its head too small, and its eyes were just empty voids staring right through us.
What do you want?
It didn't answer. It just stood there, watching us, and then it moved. Faster than I could react, it was on me, its cold, shadowy hands wrapping around my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I could only stare into those empty eyes as they bore into my soul.
Let him go.
My roommate grabbed the bedside lamp and swung it at the shadow, but it passed right through, shattering against the wall. The shadow didn't even flinch. It just tightened its grip, and I felt the world start to fade.
Please?
And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, It was gone. The pressure on my throat vanished, and I collapsed onto the bed, gasping for air. The room was silent again. The only sound, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights.
Are you okay?
I nodded. But I wasn't okay. None of this was okay. The shadow was gone, but I could still feel it, like a stain on my soul. And I knew it wasn't over.
We need to get out of here.
He was right. We couldn't stay here. Not with whatever that thing was. But as I looked toward the door, I realized something. It was closed. The door that had creaked open on its own was now shut tight, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get it to budge.
It's locked.
I felt a surge of panic, but I forced myself to stay calm. There had to be another way out. I turned to the window, but it was sealed shut, the glass thick and unbreakable. We were trapped.
What do we do?
I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we couldn't stay here. The shadow would be back, and next time, it might not let go. I looked around the room, searching for anything that could help us, but there was nothing. Just the cold, sterile walls and the faint hum of the lights.
We have to call for help.
I reached for the call button again, but before I could press it, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then they went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. The whisper came again, louder now, and I felt the cold breath on my neck once more.
It's back.
I could feel it, even in the darkness. The shadow was there, watching us, waiting, and then I heard it. A voice, low and guttural, speaking words I couldn't understand. It was coming from the shadow, and it sent a shiver down my spine.
What is it saying?
I didn't know, but I didn't want to find out. The voice grew louder, more insistent, and I felt a pressure building in my head, like it was trying to force its way inside. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice was inside me now, echoing in my mind.
Make it stop.
I couldn't. The voice was too powerful, too overwhelming, and then, just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, it stopped. The lights flickered back on, and the room was empty. The shadow was gone, and so was the voice.
Is it over?
I wanted to believe it was, but I knew better. The shadow was still out there, waiting, and it would be back. I could feel it, like a weight in the air, a promise of something worse to come.
We need to get out of here.
I nodded, but I didn't know how. The door was still locked, the window sealed. We were trapped, and the shadow was coming. I could feel it, closer now, and I knew we were running out of time.
There has to be another way.
I looked around the room again, desperate for anything that could help us, and then I saw it. A small vent in the ceiling, just big enough for a person to fit through. It was our only chance.
We have to try.
I climbed onto the bed, reaching for the vent. It was high, but I could just barely reach it. I pulled at the cover, and to my surprise, it came loose. I looked back at my roommate, and he nodded. We didn't have a choice.
Go. I'll follow.
I pulled myself up into the vent, the metal cold against my skin. It was tight, but I managed to squeeze through. I could hear my roommate climbing up behind me, and then the sound of the vent cover sliding back into place.
Keep moving.
I crawled forward, the darkness pressing in around me. The vent was narrow, and I could feel the walls closing in on me, but I kept going, knowing that the shadow was still out there, waiting.
Where does this lead?
I didn't know. All I knew was that we had to keep moving. The vent seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning through the hospital. And then, finally, I saw a light ahead. I crawled toward it, my heart pounding in my chest.
There is an opening.
I reached the end of the vent and peered out. It led to another room, this one empty and dark. I dropped down, my feet hitting the floor with a soft thud. My roommate followed, and we stood there for a moment, catching our breath.
Where are we?
I didn't know. The room was unfamiliar, and the air felt even heavier here. But at least we were out of that room. At least we had a chance.
Let's find a way out.
I nodded, and we moved toward the door. But as I reached for the handle, I heard it again. The whisper. It was faint, but it was there, and it was coming from behind us.
It's here.
I turned, and there it was. The shadow, standing in the corner of the room, its empty eyes fixed on us. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just watched, waiting.
What does it want?
I didn't know, but I knew we couldn't stay here. I grabbed the door handle and pulled, but it was locked. We were trapped again, and the shadow was closing in.
We have to fight.
I nodded, but I didn't know how. The shadow was too powerful, too unnatural. But we didn't have a choice. We had to try.
On 3.
We counted down, and then we charged, but the shadow was faster. It moved like liquid, slipping around us, and then it was on us. I felt its cold hands on my throat again, and I knew it was over.
No.
But then, just as suddenly as before, it was gone. The pressure on my throat vanished, and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. The room was silent again, the shadow nowhere to be seen.
What happened?
I didn't know, but I knew we couldn't stay here. We had to keep moving. We had to find a way out, because the shadow was still out there, waiting, and it would be back.
Let's go.
We moved toward the door again, and this time it opened. The hallway beyond was empty, but I could feel the shadow watching us from the darkness. We ran, our footsteps echoing in the empty halls, and I knew we were running out of time.
Where do we go?
I didn't know. All I knew was that we had to keep moving. The shadow was coming, and it wouldn't stop until it had us. We had to find a way out, or we were going to die here.
We can't give up.
I nodded, but I could feel the fear creeping in. The shadow was too powerful, too relentless. But we had to keep going. We had to try.
There's a door.
I saw it ahead, a faint light spilling out from underneath. We ran toward it, our hearts pounding, and I prayed it would lead us out. But as we reached it, I heard the whisper again, louder now, and I knew the shadow was close.
Don't.
I grabbed the handle and pulled, and the door swung open. The light was blinding, and for a moment, I couldn't see anything. But then my vision cleared, and I realized where we were.
The exit.
It was the hospital's main entrance, the doors leading out into the night. We ran toward them, the shadow close behind, and I could feel its cold breath on my neck. But we were so close.
Almost there.
We burst through the doors, the cold night air hitting us like a wall. We didn't stop, didn't look back. We just ran, our feet pounding against the pavement, until we were far away from the hospital.
Is it gone?
I looked back, but the hospital was just a dark silhouette against the night sky. There was no sign of the shadow, but I could still feel it, like a weight in the air. It wasn't over. Not yet.
What do we do now?
I didn't know. All I knew was that we couldn't go back. The shadow was still out there, waiting. and it would be back, but for now, we were safe. For now, we had escaped.
We have to tell someone.
I nodded, but I didn't know who would believe us. The shadow wasn't something you could explain, something you could fight. It was something dark and ancient, something that didn't belong in this world.
We'll figure it out.
I hoped he was right, but deep down, I knew the truth. The shadow wasn't gone. It was still out there, waiting, and it would be back.